All right, let me reintroduce myself for those who didn't hear the first time. I'm Steve Campbell. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Peter and Paul Community Services. This is Adam Pearson. He's our Chief Operating Officer. We'll be representing the agency tonight and telling you about us. So my intent... Okay. So my thought was to take 30 seconds and just tell you about the agency, the kind of programs that we have, and then tell you kind of what's gone on with us the past year as we've searched for a facility and landed us here today. So, and then I'll turn it over to Adam. He'll talk a little bit about the program that we would like to do. Peter and Paul's been around for just over 40 years. We're in our 42nd year now, I guess. We have an emergency shelter in the Soulard neighborhood in the basement of St. Peter and Paul Church. It's a 60-bed shelter, overnight shelter, has been there since 1981. We have another emergency shelter at the Biddle Housing Opportunity Center, which is on the northwest edge of downtown St. Louis that we operate for the city of St. Louis. It's a 101-bed shelter. We have our Benedict Joseph LeBray Center, which is a transitional program for mentally ill men and women, licensed through the state of Missouri Department of Mental Health and Department of Health and Senior Services. It's in the Shaw neighborhood. We have a program we call Positive Directions, which works as a transitional program for men and women living with HIV, and that is in the Dutchtown neighborhood. And we have our Garfield Place Apartments, which is 25 single-bedroom apartments for mentally ill men and women in the Benton Park West neighborhood. So we have kind of a continuum of emergency shelter, transitional programs, and permanent housing that we provide. That's Peter and Paul in a nutshell, to try to answer the one gentleman's question. So we have a strategic plan which led us to think that our emergency shelter in Soulard was not meeting the needs of our residents as well as it could. It's an overnight shelter only. We would like to be a 24/7 shelter. It is very crowded. We have 60 bunk beds in about 5,000 square feet. There's not a lot of room for case management, not a lot of room for AA groups or living skills groups, those kinds of things. We would like to transition to a facility that goes from the current 5,000 square feet to about 25,000 square feet. One of the things we ran into with COVID was we had to cut our 60-bed shelter down to 20 beds just to achieve the social distancing necessary to keep people safe in the shelter. We don't want to have to do that again. If the next variant of COVID comes along or the next pandemic comes along, we want to be ready for that. So we want a space that's big enough that we can house 100 people, already spaced, and we don't need to cut our numbers because of the next pandemic. So we've been seeking a larger space. So in March of last year, we contracted with a realtor, and we started looking intensively around the city and county for that kind of a facility. We looked, I won't go into the details, but we looked everywhere. We looked on the north side, we looked on the south side, we looked in the central corridor, we looked in St. Louis County. By June of last year, we were pretty focused on a building in the 8600 block of South Broadway, which I believe is in the Patch neighborhood, not too far from here, the same ward. Currently the 11th ward. It'll be the new first ward, I guess. We toured it several times. It's a commercial building. It has large open spaces. It has some offices that are appropriately sized for what we need. We really liked the building. So we went through it with our architect and with our friends at BSI Construction, who worked on the renovation costs for the building to meet our needs. In November, we made an offer on that building. The current owner, after it had been on the market for months and months and months, then started looking for a place to move their business and determined that they couldn't find anything that they could afford, and they took it off the market. So we had spent a lot of time looking at that particular building. Along the way, we had met a lot of folks from the neighborhood. We had met Alderman Schwietzer, Alderman Lappe, State Representative Butts, people from the Carondelet Stakeholders Group, people from the Carondelet Community Betterment Federation, We had introduced ourselves. This is not our first rodeo. We knew that the kinds of things that we wanted to do, we were going to need the support of the community. And so we were very transparent about what we wanted to do. But again, most of that time we were looking at this building on South Broadway. When that fell through, we told our realtor, okay, we need to open up our search again, look anywhere, but we've been very welcomed in this neighborhood. At least that's the experience we had last year. And we said, if you can find something in the Carondelet area, patch area, we would be happy to look at that. In the meantime, one of our staff people who lives in Carondelet heard about the availability of the church of Saints Mary and Joseph Chapel. And so toward the end of January, I think it was January 24th, we got our first look at the church. The staff toured it. The day we were there touring it, there was another group also looking at the building. We heard through our realtor that they were about to make an offer. We got our board of directors together, told them about that the space really met our needs well, and they voted to allow us to make an offer on that property. Since then, we've been through it again with our architect and with BSI, and they're working on plans for the renovation. We have 3 minutes. I better stop there and turn it over to Adam to give him just a few minutes to say something about what we'd like to do there, and then we'll get into your questions. You'll be brief.
Yep. So I'll be brief with this because I think that we can talk more about the programming of the shelter during the question and answer session. But the bigger things that I wanted to highlight was with the emergency shelter programs that we offer, we want to do more than just provide people with a bed. I think that's an easy thing to just have a bed. But the hard part about working with individuals who are unhoused is making sure that they have sufficient access to case management services, life skills, groups, all of that. And so what we envision with the shelter space is that it will be a 24/7 operation, because we got really great feedback from that from the Soulard neighborhood, that there was success with an operation with expanded hours to get people off of the streets. But then during those 24 hours, we wanted to make sure we had groups. And so life skills, access to case management, social work, potentially nursing, occupational therapy. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that during the question and answer session if folks have questions about that.
I'm actually going to do a PowerPoint, so I'm going to go down the back of the room and get to look at all the back of your heads. Okay, my name is Aidan McNamara, and I live directly across the street from St. Mary's and Joseph Chapel. I was asked by our group to present today, and I'm not a public speaker, so please bear with me. I want to start by saying that we are not against homeless shelters or the great work that organisations like Peter and Paul do. We are committed members of our community that care passionately about our neighbourhood, our homes, our safety, and the betterment of our community. What we are opposing is an untested model of 100+ single homeless men being placed into a residential neighbourhood. Peter and Paul have 7 months experience of running shelters for 100+ men. August 1st, 2022 was when Peter and Paul were contracted to run Biddle House. Not including Biddle House, the average number of beds in a Peter and Paul facility is 29. What we are opposing is closing a 60-bed shelter in the neighbourhood of Soulard in order to move those 60 residents to our community. A total unknown for those residents. The Soulard shelter is over 40 years in the same location. Moving this to our location could be detrimental to some of its long-use residents, especially if they are employed in the area. We were told that 50% of Soulard residents are employed mostly in restaurants near the shelter. Moving will strip those residents of their employment. Spending $6 million to add 40 beds to our city is not a good use of funds. Remember, we're not adding 100 beds. We're closing a 60-bed shelter and opening a 100-bed shelter. So we're adding 40 new beds. 40 new beds for $6 million is $150,000 a bed. Our mayor has already committed $1.8 million to the shelter. No plans, no building secured, no proposal, just a handshake deal, and $1.8 million is pledged. This money can be used to open a shelter in either the city or the county. So, what are the chances of Peter and Paul opening a shelter in the county? Well, let's take a look at some numbers. I found this 2018 report from HUD on the city's website, and I'd be happy to share with anyone who emails me. In 2018, according to this report, the total number of beds, these numbers include all shelter beds, not just emergency shelter beds. The total number of beds in the county was 1,007. The total number of shelter beds in the city was 3,114, more than 3 times as many as the county. Now, the population of St. Louis County is 1 million, and the population of St. Louis City is 300,000. For every 100 residents, for every 100 residents in the city, we provide a bed. For every 100,000 residents in the county, they provide a bed. It is time for the county to take their share of the responsibility. Homelessness is not just a city issue. This is a regional issue. Why not look to locate in the county? This is the signatory circle for St. Mary's and Joseph Chapel. In the middle, 51% of the homes in this circle have to give their support and signature to Peter and Paul. Without their signatures, the zoning won't pass. Zoning would change our historic church to a 100+ mega shelter for homeless men. Apart from the metal company on South Broadway, this is a 100% residential neighbourhood. There are no jobs available in our neighbourhood like there are in Soulard. Without transportation, how are people even going to get from downtown to this shelter? Right now, you could walk to Soulard from downtown, but it's a 2-hour walk to here. If residents leave or are expelled from the shelter, where are they going to go? What are 100 single men going to do all day, every day in our neighbourhood? This is not the right location for a mega shelter. There are numbers from Peter and Paul's website regarding the current residents in the Soulard Shelter. 30% are mentally ill, 30% have substance abuse problems, and 50% are unemployed. Now, where are residents with substance abuse problems going to go during the day? They're going to use our alleys, our parks, our streets. We're already battling drug problems in our neighbourhood, and we are winning. There are so many unknowns of adding a mega shelter to a purely residential neighbourhood. Peter and Paul will not screen residents. Sex offenders and ex-convicts will enter unknown. Now, Peter Paul's response has been that there are already sex offenders in your neighbourhood. However, adding more sex offenders is not the solution. Unknown and unidentified sex offenders, ex-convicts are 10 times more likely to be homeless. And again, we're not against giving a person a second chance, but we were talking about unidentified and unknown convicted felons being brought into our neighbourhood to live. We have schools in our neighbourhood. The school bus stops on my street like 4 times. This is not the location for such a mega shelter. A University of Pennsylvania study on homelessness shelters in Vancouver shows that the presence of a shelter increases property crime by 56% for residents within 328 feet of that shelter. Thefts from vehicles and other thefts and vandalism driving the increase. We are just getting this out of our neighbourhoods. We have committed years to our neighbourhood. Ask yourself if you would have purchased or rented your home if there was a shelter for 100+ homeless men directly across the street. And be honest to yourself, I would not have taken the risk. Our property values have raised significantly thanks to the pride that we take in our homes and the commitment to the community. Peter Paul rents at Soulard Shelter. It has 0 visibility because it's in the basement of St. Peter and Paul Church. Any potential purchaser or investor in our neighbourhood will have the same concerns that we have now if there is a shelter for 100+ homeless men. So, what about our homes? Well, let's just assume generally that the median price of the 120 or so show homes around St. Mary's and Joseph Chapel is let's just assume that the value of the median price of the 120 or so homes around St. Mary and Joseph's Chapel is $175,000. There's a study by the New York Times that states a home will lose 7% of its value if it's located next to a homeless shelter, but that is New York. I would conservatively say that each of our homes will lose 30 to 50% of their value. 30% of 175,000 is 52,500. That's leaving your home now worth 122,500. 50% is 87,500. That's leaving you with a home now worth 87,500. And that's per house. Multiply those numbers by the 120 homes in our community and it is millions of dollars. Our neighbourhood emergency services are already stretched to the limit. This mega shelter will increase the usage of those services. Don't think there won't be fights or overdoses or other emergencies. Right now we can barely even get our trash picked up. Peter and Paul did not contact any residents until this weekend about the proposed mega shelter. Instead, they went behind the scenes and worked with community groups and politicians gathering support. Carondelet stakeholders are one such group in our neighbourhood. And we can see their annual goals for the Triangle area, the Patch neighbourhood. Execute a relocation plan from the Triangle for homeless addicted residents. Where do you think these homeless and addicted residents will be relocated to? Our neighbourhood. And this will happen from all over the region. Relocating homeless and addicted to our community. Another note is that there's also plans for Magdala House Foundation to take over the old Riversview nursing home. Again, plans are running behind the scene. Magdala House also provides homeless shelters. This will potentially add another mega shelter with possibly 130 relocated residents. That's a potential 280 homeless added to our community within a 6-block distance. You can see where the church is compared to Riverview Nursing. When Peter and Paul first proposed this facility, it was on South Broadway, 8620 South Broadway to be exact. The immediate surrounding area would be South Broadway, and the area has much less direct residential exposure than our community. The new church location puts the front door entrance directly across the street to many of us. I hope Peter and Paul continue to do great work and find a suitable location, but our community is not that location. I worked hard for my house. I've been here 7 years. I love Carondelet, but the amount of behind-the-scenes operations and meetings that have occurred to put this mega shelter in our community angers and saddens me.
Bullshit.
This is not going in the Ivory at the Patch neighbourhood. It's not going in Holly Hills. It's not going in Soulard or Central West End or the county. It's been backdoored into our community, and it's not difficult to see why. None of the people that sit on these groups, such as Peter Paul, or stakeholders, or any other group advocating for this mega shelter, none of them live in this neighbourhood, our neighbourhood. Again, I need to reiterate that we are not against homeless shelters. We are opposing a colossal 25,000 square foot mega shelter for 100 to 150. We do not support such mega shelters in any community. It is not fair to attempt a takeover of a community in this manner. $6 million to add 40 shelter beds to our city. As a community, we should not be put in this position. I implore local residents to ask Peter and Paul to find a different, more suitable location and not sign anything. We are risking our community. We are risking our neighbourhood, our homes, our safety, and the safety of our children. We are risking Carondelet.
Okay, now we're going to get to the questions portion. Shall we start with you, Jared?
Sure.
Sorry about that. Not used to this job. And we will ask that everyone please be respectful of each other.
My name is Jared Gastrick, and my house is 0.5 blocks from the site. It's not easy for me to stand up here, but I feel it's the right thing to do for our neighborhood and the homeless. I work in social work, helping people like Peter and Paul residents find jobs, get employment. I'm a father and I care about the city. I'm concerned if you know what Carondelet's really like. We need a lot of help down here. I'm asking myself if this project will make our neighborhood better. We recently lost a family member shot in front of our house. It's not easy here. My question is, what kind of preventative projects or improvements to the neighborhood are included in this plan? 1 second. My mom is on the Human Rights Commission in St. Charles. I've researched successful shelter plans across the country that include such plans. Knowing what is provided on your webpage and on your flyer, and knowing what my mom is working on in St. Charles, makes me think that St. Chuck is more progressive than us. How have you been working with the city to prepare for the inevitable issues that come with the increase of residents?
Jared, thank you so much, and my condolences to you. I think we could think about this question in a couple of different ways. I think there's one side of the equation where we talk about what we are currently doing in neighborhoods in which we operate, and then the other side is what our plan would be if we were to locate in this neighborhood, and how we would seek to foster partnership. So currently in all of our facilities, be it Biddle or Garfield, in any of the neighborhoods that we operate, we have cameras in our facility. As I understand, I don't know what camera oversight there is on the property currently, but typically we have sufficient camera access and visibility in all of our facilities where we see all walkways, interior areas of the building, excluding restrooms, of course. But that gives us a good idea of the activities and any goings on in a facility. Across all of our facilities, we've worked very closely with law enforcement. Law enforcement and sheriff's departments are welcome in all of our facilities for investigations. Any questions that they have, we are able to speak with them. We work hand in hand with the St. Louis Police Department just because the folks that they encounter on the streets who might have severe mental illness or are engaging in behavior that is unbecoming of a neighborhood member, these are individuals we want to make sure are accountable, are held accountable. And so for the programs we have, we offer security cameras at all sites with very liberal coverage of the property, but we also offer an opportunity to engage with law enforcement, perhaps as a substation at our facilities. I think that one of the big questions that has been posed to us with this facility and then in any of our other programs is, what is the strategy for engaging in the community for safety measures and mechanisms? One of the success points that we've had in Soulard is that we worked very close with the neighborhood and the business to work out a plan where we would sort of patrol the streets close to the shelter. And so one of the concerns that they had is that there were individuals who were not using our shelter, but individuals who were just kind of outside hanging out. And so we worked with the police department, we worked with the neighborhood business owners in the area to come up with a plan to send staff out just to kind of check up on people. And a lot of what we found is that individuals needed help that we didn't really offer because we weren't a 24/7 operation.
The plan, if I don't mean to interrupt, but if I could,
Sorry.
because I know other people have questions.
Right.
The question was, are you guys working with the government? Have they contacted you? What kind of plans? It's not just the older people. Is DHS here? Is DHS here? Have they what kind of plans are you guys working with? What kind of infrastructure is going to happen into the neighborhood?
So, I guess this afternoon, speak, right? Good afternoon. All right, good afternoon. I'm Yusef Skagin, I'm the director of the Department of Human Services. We issue all of the federal and local dollars for sheltering, transitional housing, and permanent housing. When we're thinking about addressing the needs of the most vulnerable in this community, our focus is on getting people permanently housed. Stays at shelter is to be temporary. Peter and Paul helps to facilitate that in making sure that people are prepared to transition back into permanent housing. Actually, investing in young people as well as folks who are struggling is an asset to our community. We revitalize, just as churches did, shelters do. They invest in people and they see the humanity within them and allow for that potential to be realized. So when we work with our given shelters or other projects that we fund, we outline what are the security measures relative to that. So at Biddle House, there are security measures. There are security based upon cameras. We have law enforcement that is involved in a variety of activities that are necessary there. We do monitor calls for service. We work with the local alderpersons to ensure that nothing untoward does happen in those locations. And we address any sort of adverse activities immediately. If you look at the activities in this...
We have a lot.
There's no more improvements.
So no plan for safety in the neighborhood?
But that's what they were asking. What is the plan for this? This is why we're here. Okay. Sarah, I believe you have a... These are all my neighbors, so I know. That's first name.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I've been in the neighborhood since 2007 as a homeowner. I'm the same distance, essentially, from the church. My question is for Peter and Paul. It's multi-part, but they're all very connected. Not trying to cheat here. Will there be a nightly curfew, sobriety checks, and weapons checks? Please explain the logistics, if so. If a shelter guest is ejected for any of those reasons or otherwise from the program, what wraparound services will be provided to ensure the community safety and that there is no loitering or camping in the immediate neighborhood?
Yes, thank you. That's an excellent question, and I'll answer a lot quicker this time. So there will be weapons checks. Currently at Soulard and our Biddle shelter, we do weapons checks, which includes going through bags, feeling people's pockets, etc. Individuals who are intoxicated, sometimes they are let into our facility if they are not posing a danger to others, but we also have to make sure that we are providing a safe living environment for the other folks living in the shelter. We have partnerships with an organization that provides case management and outreach services for individuals who are struggling with opioid addiction and other substance use issues. Sometimes when we discharge somebody because they are disruptive because of intoxication, we can call this organization, and then they'll pick that person up and take them to what's called a sobering facility. And so they won't be just roaming around the neighborhood. So we make sure that that person goes somewhere. Did that answer part of your...
How do you make sure that the person who comes to the door intoxicated goes to the place you just described, sir?
So yeah, so that's a matter of enforcement, and so if we have multiple staff on grounds, which we do, we make sure that that person gets into the vehicle or is escorted somewhere else where they can be sober or get sober. A question about curfew, we're still working out the operational details, but it is a 24/7 program, and the idea of the 24/7 program is to get people off the streets, out of the neighborhood, off the sidewalks, right? So we would welcome people for most hours of the night, but we're still developing that operational procedure.
You said, you said sometimes you can have them taken somewhere. What about the other times?
So once somebody leaves our facility, we can't just jump on their backs and hold them down, right? So what we try to do is engage them with positive reinforcement, relationship building, rapport building, and a lot of the individuals we know in our shelter, they come in and we've known them for quite some time. And so we try to build those relationships as much as we can and to help them understand that them being intoxicated in the neighborhood is a violation of the Safe Neighbor policy, and that they could be at risk of losing their privileges at the shelter if they demonstrate intoxication.
So if they show up drunk, you turn them away and they come to my house next door. in other words.
Alex? We're not on that part yet. Right now, we're still in the, sorry, just so everybody knows. Right now, we're still in the question asking portion of the prepared questions from the people that live right within the circle, okay? We'll get to the rest of you if you put your name and stuff in the box. Alex? Here she is. And Nora, you'll be next. Yeah, just write your name. Anybody who missed it and wants to ask a question, put your name on a card and how close you are to the chapel, and we'll go closest to furthest away. Thank you.
Okay. So, wow. I don't have anything written down. I have a newborn. I didn't have time to prepare that. I live directly across the street. I have 3 daughters. Like directly across the street, my oldest daughter learned to ride her bike at the chapel. So my question that's been addressed a little bit about sex offender registry and other violent crime histories for residents. What I understand is there's not any screening process and there's no way for us to know who those neighbors are because we can look that information up as it pertains to everyone else in our neighborhood. This would be 100 people that we don't know and we have no way of knowing. So, I mean, that's my whole question.
Sure. So to answer your question, we don't screen for sex offender registry. All individuals who are unhoused deserve the dignity of housing. And so we welcome individuals in with open arms and make sure that they are enrolled in aggressive case management services. As soon as somebody is enrolled in our services, we work with them on goals. And so this is something that's very important to us, that they find housing sooner rather than later, almost immediately in some cases. And so the individuals, if you are concerned about individuals coming in who have a background that is unfavorable, the goal of the treatment team and the staff is to hit the ground running as hard as possible and find housing so that they can move out. And so that's our approach to getting people moved on.
So you're saying clearly, just so I'm sure to answer your question, there is, like, we would not know if there were 10 sex offenders, 99, we would not know. Okay, thank you. Just to clarify. Nora?
Hi, my name is Nora, and I live at 63 block of Minnesota. And my question is there a rezoning hearing already scheduled for the property? And is it possible for this to be approved without 50% of the residents' votes within the 500-yard radius of the property? If so, how does that process work?
But my understanding of the process is that we as Peter and Paul need to get at least 51% of the households within 500-yard radius of the property to approve us being there. If that doesn't happen, then we don't move forward. I don't think there's any process involved. I'm looking to Yusef or to one of the alder people to tell me differently, but my understanding is I don't think there's a way around that. I think if that's what it takes, and that's what Alderman Schwietzer is telling me, yeah.
So has the zoning already been worked on?
No, I mean, we have,
It has to be rezoned.
we are trying to collect those signatures, but we are a long way from having 51% of,
To be rezoned, so it's not in the process yet.
we're at the beginning of that process, yes. We've started collecting signatures, but there is no zoning hearings scheduled at this point because we don't have enough signatures yet.
And what's your deadline for the signature?
We have, through our sale contract, we've been given 90 days to work through any contingencies, part of which is zoning. So we have 90 days to.
Are you in your 90 days?
We are beginning February 4th, I think, is when they accepted the contract, yeah.
So you're down to 60 days?
Okay, Sean? Sean here? Oh, there he is. thought I saw you earlier and then you disappeared on me.
I'm
And
loud
then,
enough, I'll be just fine. Alex answered, asked one of my questions, but I do have an additional. I spoke with Deb at your group, and you said when these guys come in that you guys take their possessions from them if it's not. No? Okay. Hello. Okay. I spoke with someone from Peter and Paul, and they told me that whenever these gentlemen come in, that they have possessions that are contraband taken away from them, like drugs. My concern is that if you take drugs away or needles away when they come in, they're going to try to stash them somewhere. If I'm an addict and I'm going in for the night and I got a good buzz going, I'm going to try to stash my kids somewhere, and I'm going to try to stash my drugs somewhere so I can get it when I get up in the morning. Now, I would try to stash it in the yard, an alleyway. If I'm thinking about it, I'm going to try to keep it nearby so when I'm out the door, I got some food in me, I can get back at it. My concern is why would you take that away from them and force them to hide it? And I talked to Deb about that, and she seemed open. Even at your existing shelter, say this doesn't happen. I think it'd be important to let these people have some way of using a locker so they aren't forced to stash things in areas where kids could find them. So that's just something for consideration. And if you have any answers, I'll have to take it. I have to leave soon.
okay, and Debbie is next. Debbie?
Okay.
Sorry? Yeah, that's my concern. That's my concern. They're going to stash it somewhere. I mean, if I'm an addict, I'm going to stash my contraband somewhere. I'm not going to lose my kid.
Yeah.
So if an addict comes in, somebody that has a substance abuse problem, and they're trying to find a place for the night, they can lock that in a locker and keep it safe?
We have multiple organizations that we collaborate with, like, Adam said earlier.
Okay, so do you have somewhere for them, since you're answering my question now, can they lock their drugs and their kit in a locker?
Hold on, Sean, I'm sorry. We're going to stay with the people who are here today to
Okay, thank
answer
you.
questions, okay? Thank you. All right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Debbie, and I was born, bred, and I've lived in this area my entire life. I love Carondelet, and I just finished a very nice career. People have told me, leave, leave. I'm beginning to feel unsafe on my streets. But you know what? I'm not going to leave. I've decided to stay here and work for my neighborhood. And so I want to thank Peter and Paul for, if you're not aware, there's a list of questions and answers online. And I research everything. I'm a researcher. I read everything, I do everything. And there's a lot of things, believe me, that I've read that I have concerns about. I am not against homeless shelters. I'm against the homeless shelter being here. So this is my question. So, in a residential neighborhood, to be clear. So, online, there's a question, and I've seen it numerous times since we started advertising and expressing this meeting online. Why Carondelet? The summary answer online is Carondelet and the surrounding area currently have visible homeless population staying in backyards and various other places, causing unsafe conditions for all of us. A 24-hour shelter with wraparound social services will address an immediate and pressing need in Carondelet and the surrounding areas. So I go to Belle Reve and Sister Marie Charles Park quite often, and I meet homeless people there. I have to gain their trust first, and then I try to help some of them. So when I do that, I call 211 or try to call the housing hotline to try to help these people. And normally, I'm told that it's like on a first come, first served basis. And this literature that we received says that, and others have told me, oh, Debbie, we, in the neighborhood, we don't want people like, in the vacant house. They're going to go to the shelter now. Well, my question to you is, will Peter and Paul do outreach in our community where you're putting the shelter to recruit them? I can tell you, like we can all tell you and help you figure out where they're at, to go recruit the people or give them priority access to those causing unsafe conditions. Because none of us will disagree with you that we have these people in our neighborhood and that we have unsafe conditions. So what would you comment on that about?
That is an excellent question. So Peter and Paul partners very closely hand in glove with outreach teams. And so currently we do not have outreach staff at Peter and Paul. We are primarily housing and shelter services. And so when people come into our facilities, we provide them services, et cetera, et cetera. We've worked very closely with BJC Behavioral Health that has a very robust outreach team portfolio, as well as Places for People. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but it's an organization that serves men and women who are struggling with mental illness. They also have outreach teams, and so we work very, very close with them. In some cases, we are contractually intertwined with them, and so they are partners of ours. And so I think that's a function of getting to know the neighborhood and what the needs are. The more we are out, the more we see faces, perhaps that are recognizable, and so we call BJC, or we call Places for People, or any one of our hundreds, perhaps, winter outreach friends, and we can have a conversation about so-and-so who lives on Minnesota or Michigan, and so that way we're able to connect.
Would you consider having a liaison officer at your establishment to interconnect with the neighborhood about security issues and finding the homeless?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is the Department of Human Services, through some reallocated public safety dollars, has been allowed to hire 12 outreach workers. And so when I started with the department, we didn't have, as a city, a comprehensive and coordinated outreach strategy. And so what we've developed over this period of time is what does this look like in terms of homelessness, in terms of calls to the Citizen Service Bureau, any other outreach. I'm sorry, this is our outreach component though. I understand this is the outreach component. I mean, I understand he's taking, we're funding their operation. I just want to center this point, please. So I just want to state that outreach is being done in here. There are 90 calls for service for homeless individuals that are just in the South City area. More than a quarter of them are coming just from this neighborhood, particularly in the Carondelet Park area, and our outreach team are coordinating and making sure folks are going to the closest shelter nearby.
Maybe in the future we could have a meeting with you. That'd be great. Okay, so now we're on to did I get everybody from the prepared questions? Yeah, okay. So now these are the closest ones. Some of you I don't know. So I have Taylor March, who lives just 300 feet.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I live pretty close, almost across the street. I want to thank you for coming out and speaking with us and just like working to address questions, and also just kind of like to the room say that like I appreciate your perspective, but also like you don't speak for me. And I really am enthusiastic and glad that you're looking at our neighborhood and engaging in these conversations. So thank you for that. The only question, and I called you beforehand and we spoke on the phone for quite some time, so I thank you for answering all the questions I had over the phone. One of the things that I've thought about as we had more time to reflect on it was just like, what conversations have been had with the residents in your Soulard facility currently? How do they view this? Because I think one of the concerns that Aiden did bring that I would be curious about is just like, these people have a somewhat consistent location that they're coming back to. I would hope that this is an exciting move for them of like having additional support, additional care at this facility. What have you heard from your current residents? That's all.
So I'm actually going to defer very quickly to our wonderful Soulard Shelter team. Terry Dunn is our program director. She's sitting down. Terry, can you stand up and wave your hand? Terry, do you have a 15-second answer to this question? Hold on.
Actually, they're really excited. I project really good. Actually, they're really excited because of the simple fact it gives them the opportunity to not have to be waking up and have to leave. I get to service the clients 24 hours a day, which gives me more hands-on approach to offer those wraparound services that the clients need. Right now, we have with them being in shelter and have to leave, we don't have that approach sometimes. So we have great success at the shelter, and they're just really excited that they'll have, I can offer longer term shelter to offer more services and get them connected to services quicker.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sandra Bush, also.
You can read my question.
Oh,
I can
okay.
project really well.
Okay. Sandra wants.
My question is,
Okay.
what, when they're not there during the day, and they can go during the day, at night, whatever, it's a 24 open door policy. What if they're out roaming at night? No one knows it except maybe us, and as a single senior citizen, and there's other people on my street, we're alone, and we don't look forward to parking our cars on, like on Michigan where I live, and having to get into our house when you have, and there is a facility at Loughborough and Michigan. What is that facility? There's a lot of people that walk back up and down the Michigan there. So isn't that already a facility for people who need help?
I don't know.
That's a different
Sandy,
facility
but that's
across the street.
and that's a different
Right.
topic. Let's stay on this tonight, okay? Okay, so she wants to know what the men are doing.
So, currently in Soulard, there is a 9 p.m. curfew. Like I said, we have to,
You meant during the day, I'm sorry, Barbara.
did you say during the day or at night?
Nighttime.
Nighttime.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because that's what we're more concerned with. I mean, they're going to roam if they can come in and out of their facility at all hours.
Okay, so Daquita, do you have a 15-second answer to this question?
I was gonna say, if they're out
Can you
at,
stand up, please?
if they're out at night, we get them to do schedules, so if they're out at night, then they're working at night. So we know where all our residents are at all times. I project well also. One more time in the mic. And I'm a comedian. But no, we have, but we know where all our residents are in the 24-hour period. They have schedules. That's difficult once they check in. Yeah, once they check in, they cannot leave the facility. Unless they have a job.
What is it? Which way is it?
That's a Soulard. So we're already putting things in place for Carondelet.
So it's gonna be the same deal, though, except the only time they go out is to work and then come back home, is that Carondelet?
Yeah. Carondelet would be even more strict.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So if it's an unemployed person, they will never
But
leave the
they
building.
would be in the facility. They would be programming, and they would be wraparound services with our collaborating,
So
facility.
if they're not doing
So-
that, though, they're never leaving the building. If they're not working or to wrap around service.
Well, they have to go to the doctor's appointments, they have to go out
Right,
for
I'm
other
saying,
services, yes.
but they won't be out they'll never be out just to be able to walk around.
Exactly.
All right, excuse me. So there are two different things. So we have our current Soulard procedures, and then we have what we're thinking about for this new shelter operation. We're taking a lot of considerations in mind. We have, just very briefly, we have client surveys at Peter and Paul that let us know what sort of services the clients are interested in, what sort of operations the clients are interested in. We're still looking through best practices for how we want to operate a 24/7 facility. It would probably be similar to the operations at Biddle, which is 24/7, but typically individuals will go to work, they will go to case management services. At night, if they skip a set number of days out, if we have a bed designated for that person and they do not come back from wherever they are out into the community, we will hold that bed for perhaps 2 or 3 nights, and then they will be discharged because they're not using our services anymore. If they're out on the streets, we can't really control what they do, but I think this again is a function of great collaboration between our organization and law enforcement. Sir, you mentioned a liaison, perhaps a security liaison in the community, and I think that's where that comes into play. We want to make sure that we know who's out, who's in, and what they're doing at night.
Is everybody good with that? Okay. All right, next I have Sister Barbara.
I don't have a question.
Oh,
I
you-
had a comment.
Oh. Make it quick, then we're trying to do the questions.
All right, I was just asked to make a comment. I do live at the Mother House, which is across the street from on Holly Hills, and I've lived there now for about 15 years, having moved back here to St. Louis from Kansas City. I have spent my life in high school education, adult ed, et cetera, and also I staffed a Catholic worker house in Kansas City, Missouri, on 31st Street and Troost, which is the roughest block of the whole city.
Sister Barbara, we don't have time for that.
Okay. So, we already have homeless men and women in the Carondelet neighborhood. Everybody agree? Obviously, we already do. They're in our alleys. Most of the people that I know who live on Minnesota, they're afraid to go back to their alley now because of the homeless, because of the trash that's left there by them. Yes, sir. And they're also afraid to, be walking in the neighborhood. For an example, we just had a house not too long ago that squatters were living in. It was burned down, not burned down, but the fire department came 1 block on 6300 of Minnesota, and we think that was probably a homeless person who was squatting in the house. So I think probably all of you who live at that block know about that.
And I don't mean to cut her off, we're gonna have a lot of other meetings. Tonight's agenda is trying to get some questions out, so.
I think her question might be, is Carondelet homeless people going to be prioritized?
Or.
It's been asked already.
Right,
I'm
that's
sorry,
already.
I'm gonna interrupt. Can you please, for the benefit of everyone here, you guys have been doing this for 40 years? Yeah. How many people in the 40 years that you've been doing this have assaulted someone nearby your facility or committed a crime nearby your facility? I think what people want to know is that, no, don't clap for me. I don't think it's a big number. I think this is really, look, I respect everyone's concerns, but the facts are going to help people feel better about this. So how many people, how long do they stay? I think people are under the impression these people are going to just move in, live here free, and just wander around the neighborhood. And I don't think that's what you guys are doing at all. So help them understand.
So that is part of it. I mean, everybody has a little different question. So we're just going to let them do it. Okay? I mean, we're trying to give everybody their voice tonight. It's a community meeting. It wasn't set up by anybody in particular. Huh?
Yeah, in 40 years, I don't know if we have any longitudinal data. I mean, that's all the way back to the 1980s. So what I can say is that individuals who are unhoused are significantly more likely to be victims of crime than to actually perpetrate crime. So one thing that I've noted in many conversations with police officers in the Soulard neighborhood is that typically when there is a call for service, it is for CIT or disturbance. And so that's kind of the code of the call. CIT is crisis intervention team. And so typically somebody who has a mental illness is having a really hard day, there's something going on, and so they act out in a manner that is disruptive at the shelter. So we have a plan in place at Peter and Paul to get everybody enrolled in mental health first aid across the agency. And so we will be able to handle those crises without having to bring in law enforcement officers. But typically there is no assault on staff, there is no assault on neighbors, just because we're able to talk with individuals and engage them, build rapport, plug them into case management services, that sort of thing.
Next we have Ivy March, Taylor's wife. And she lives really close to.
Okay, hi. Can you hear me? Okay, it's really hard to tell. Yeah, I just want to say, wow, look at this turnout. And I know a lot of us are in opposing kind of positions and disagree with everybody, but what I see is a community that really cares about their neighborhood, no matter what their perspective is on this, and I think that's really important just to acknowledge. So my question is actually for like the room, because so I live very close to this proposed site. Initially when I learned about it, I was really nervous. I was really skeptical. You know, I have a 3-year-old daughter, and yeah, when you like, you drop the, you know, sex offender, obviously as a parent, like, you know, that's scary. And also, there are sex offenders in our neighborhood already.
251.
Children are actually more likely, you know, abuse happens from people in families and people you know. To the question, yes. So my question, yes, I know. My question is like, yes, we can look and say like, why isn't this being done in the county? There are homeless people in the county, yeah. Why isn't this done in another part of the city? Yeah, they should. Where does it stop? Can it stop in our community, in our neighborhood, and say, yes, we take care of our community? Because we're not talking about people being brought in from other areas. My question is, can we be the community that says it ends with us? We take care of our people, whether they're homeowners or renters or unhoused.
Thank you, Ivy. Okay, next we have Laurie Glass. Sorry, Laurie Blaze.
My question is it just for men, and why is it only just for men? Because we have a problem with homeless women that are in our neighborhood. And then I think this gentleman answered the question. I was really hoping that it was going to be the 100 people that are in the Carondelet area. So to hear that you're closing down or changing, that you're not going to have it in Soulard and you're bringing those people here, and then we have even more of a problem, that concerns me. I have a lot of people squatting in my neighborhood, and that's what I would like to stop. I would like to help them out, and I don't want to have one more thing added to our neighborhood. I want to actually solve our neighborhood issues.
Again, let's say the question. Okay,
local would be
Bree,
prioritized.
who lives less than one.
Oh, did you have I answered question. Why is it just men? Oh, I missed the question. I thought it was for
And why not the Carondelet? Why is it not just Carondelet?
So there are a number of shelters that serve women and women with children. When our shelter opened in 1981, it served men, women, and children. Honestly, it was run by a bunch of volunteer do-gooders who really didn't know what they were doing. And if you think about taking a room similar to this and putting 50 men, women, and children into it, you'd realize pretty quickly that that's not the best practice. We helped other churches and organizations open shelters for women and women with children, and we changed our model in 1985 to just serve the men. And that's what we've done. It's different when each person has their own bedroom, has their own bathroom. We do have facilities that serve men and women, but our shelters at this point serve men only. I would be happy to prioritize the folks who are homeless in the Carondelet neighborhood. I would have no problem with that at all. We can work with the city and see how allowable that is given our current contracts. But that makes perfect sense to me. We're in the neighborhood. We want to be good neighbors to everybody here. It's what we've done in Soulard. We've been a presence at neighborhood meetings in Soulard going back to the 1980s. They know who we are. They know who to call if there's an issue. They know if there's a homeless person at the gas station causing a problem, acting out, they will call us, and our staff will go over and look at the security footage and say, yes, I know that man, he's not staying with us, but here, this is where we can find him, this is, we'll help you address the problem. That's that's what we try to do.
And again, let's just try to, we've got our whole stack here. Okay, Vree, and Vree is less than 1 block from backyard. Huh? Yuri, sorry, can't read.
How you doing? I'm just listening to what y'all saying, and this is how my question is coming about. You said that you talked to the people, and you've been knowing these people for a very long time, and y'all also said that these people are working within the facility while they are at the facility. So the question is, what time period are these people staying here in a long time distance, and while they are working at the facility, are they making money? Are they just here just to live and, you know what I'm saying, waste time basically?
Thank you. And perhaps there might have been some miscommunication. I can take responsibility for that. So when we say working at the facility, I was more so talking in terms of participating in case management, self-care groups, one-on-one sessions with therapists, that sort of thing. Some individuals are employed, and so they might leave the building and go work somewhere else. But typically, the profile of somebody who moves into one of our emergency shelters is that they're there for a couple of months and then they move on. A number of people are there for 1 or 2 days, and we prioritize finding housing for them and making really aggressive strides with case management. And so when somebody is there, the very first thing that our shelter team does is they do an evaluation. And so I think one of the earlier questions was about screening. So there is healthcare screening, there's mental health screening, life skills screening, self-care type screening that we do. And based on that data, we come up with a treatment plan in collaboration with that person. And during the daytime, they work with us for their goals and what their treatment plan is. And so we don't see people just sitting around. When they're in the shelter, they're there to work with us and to actually make progress on their goals.
All right.
And
Thank you.
Question she was asking, is it firm and totally set that it's going to be Soulard coming this direction, or is there any flexibility on that?
Yeah, so I think, and just a little bit of clarification there, it's not like we're busing the people from Soulard and bringing them into this neighborhood. The composition of a shelter is always fluid, right? And so let's say we do move into this shelter. The individuals in Soulard on night 1 might be different than the individuals at this shelter on night 2. Right? It's a different composition, and so there's turnover in shelters frequently. So it's not like we're just picking up the entire Soulard population and bringing it here. It's an open shelter for people who need it.
Okay. Next we have Jessica, 0.1 miles from the...
I think that's right. So, I live here, I live on Virginia. Homeowner there since 2016, and a lot of people have been asking about what's going on in the evening. I have an 11-year-old son, and I see a lot of kids walking from that school right there on Loughborough, although my son doesn't go there, but walking from that school right there on Loughborough. My concern is, during the day, what sort of traffic control will there be? I understand that these are adults and all of those things, and believe you me, I understand that everyone can get in a bad way in a situation. So my concern is for the children that are walking to and from school, that are coming to and from activities, that are going, and granted, it could be the people that are already here walking down the street that could do something to them, but adding an additional layer of residents that people already feel some type of way about is going to me, it's going to heighten people's fear, and it's going to heighten people's suspicion, if that makes sense. So I'm just curious, during those school hours, what what types of things are in place to protect the children walking to and fro, coming from activities, going to the store, doing whatever kids do when it's light outside.
Thank you.
I don't have any plans for traffic control right now. It's still very early in the process. I think that what I would say is in the development, we would do what we have mentioned before, is work closely with law enforcement and any individuals in the neighborhood who have feedback about where people walk to school and what routes people take. I know generally what the bus stops are by the shelter, and so I know that if anything, people will be getting off on, you know, X, Y, and Z stops. It's still very early in the process, so I have not yet developed a plan for traffic control for walkways and all of that.
Good evening. I work and have retired from St. Louis Public Schools. I live in the neighborhood. And my question was, have you developed, I heard you say that you had, or you were establishing partnerships with various businesses. So to that question, I would say you need to develop a relationship with St. Louis Public Schools. Because we have activities during the day, we have games, everything else in the evenings for our children. So child safety is very, it's a high priority for me. So I wanted to make sure that you do that.
Okay, next I have Laurie Clear. Starts with a K. You live 1 block from the chapel?
Because I wanted to tell you how close I live. I'm okay with having.
Oh, you don't have a question?
No, I'm
Okay.
okay with having a shelter in
Thank
my
you.
neighborhood.
I do. And I'm not on your, I'm not on your, I didn't write my question down. But I understand there were certain things that you check for from each individual. Why not check if they are pedophiles? And why not check for drugs?
It's a low barrier shelter.
These kind of things, because, and we have children around here. So that's my question. That was a question I came to have answered, and so far it has not been answered.
What's the question?
Why are they not checking for pedophiles?
And drug offenders?
Yes, why are they not checking for other things?
With a school 5 blocks away and a library 3 blocks away, from what I understand.
You can look up every house that pedophile lives in, you can't look up the shelter.
But they're on the registry.
So we, for the purposes of a shelter, we assess for their immediate needs. And for if you're moving into a shelter with 100 other men, the top of our mind as far as priority goes is, do they have weapons? Do they have drugs on them or contraband? And do they have have they had history of being, kicked out of our shelter before? We do have individuals on a banned list, and so individuals have done something and we have removed them from our facilities and that they are no longer allowed in our facilities. But that is our priority. It's their mental health, it's their own health in general. Do they have contraband? And then how are they going to act in regards to the other clients at the shelter? So that's our priority.
My question was why that wasn't one of the things you check off.
Right, I guess it sounds like you're saying you've got that internal thing. She's wondering about it for the community. Like you're worried about, what I mean?
For the purposes of case management and getting people home as quickly as possible, that has not been something that's come up. The idea is to get them out. They come into the shelter, we assess them, they're there for a period of days or weeks, and we get them out into their housing. And so for us, it is the previous items that I had discussed that's a priority for us.
I'm sorry, I need to interject here. So what I'm just hearing right now, and be forewarned that I was fully on board with y'all before this meeting. So basically what you're saying is that your first priority is the people that are coming into your shelter. So the community is the second priority, that's what I'm hearing? Absolutely.
The clients in the shelter are part of the St. Louis community. And so when...
Hold on, I understand that. You said that earlier, that homeless people, they deserve empathy, and I even said this online in a group. I said, let's calm down, lower the temperature, let's practice empathy. However, you're not really giving us a lot here. You're not giving us a lot. You're not answering our questions. We have children, we have schools.
A person isn't going to accept therapy when they're stigmatized by the place they're at in the community.
It's not my fault that they're a sex offender.
You
You're
didn't
not
have a
gonna have
question
to
either on the list.
You know what? Why don't you back off?
Okay.
Why don't you submit a question?
Okay, hey, please. This is a community. I'm hoping everyone that's here tonight is from our community and respects one another, even if we disagree. Tonight we're here to get questions answered. We all have a lot of questions. Okay, so we are running short on time, and I would really like to give just a minute to our aldermen and the candidates, just so that we can get a...
Can we just ask really quick, what percentage of signatures have you gotten so far?
She can, yeah, that's a...
As far as I know, we need in the neighborhood of 50 to 55 signatures. I think we're still trying to determine, you know, how many of the properties in that radius are vacant and how we count those. I believe we have about 10 signatures so far. So we're at about 20% or less of what we need.
That's all you need?
How's the 51? How is the 51% calculated? Is it by residency? Is it by ownership? How are you getting that number?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer.
He asked...
I heard the question,
you
but I
did.
don't know.
Oh, okay. This woman over here is going to answer because they don't know.
I'm the one that had to work with the zoning guy. So it can be the person renting the property or the person owning the property. But it can only be one vote per property. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Makes total sense.
Okay.
So initially he had told me duplexes that he would take two, but then he changed his mind. So it's one vote per building. So if it's like a 4-family flat, it's one vote.
Oh, that is not fair. Yeah, that... Okay, well, somebody make a note of that, because for anything, not just you guys, but for any kind of rezoning thing, that is not the way it should be. Okay, so anyway, we're running short on time. Julie's going to need to get out of here, and our aldermen and the candidates were good enough to come, and we'd just like to hear a little bit from them on how they feel about this project being in a residential area, because Ward 1's going to be a big ward. So it's like this could happen anywhere in the ward, and I want to know, what do you feel about a development like this, or a quick trip, something that's going to change a neighborhood so drastically, not being like, I don't know, the residents being mailed something. I mean, we've got a U.S. Postal Service, so that conversations can get started. So that's kind of what I want to...
Is there a timer on responses?
You know, they're really good. They're quick.
Well, if you want to start with Anne, I know she has to go to another meeting.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and
if you want to go before me, Tony, that's fine. Yeah.
Here you go.
Hi everyone, I'm Anne Schwietzer. I'm the current alderwoman of the 13th Ward. I really appreciate you all being here today. What I've been telling people when they've reached out to me is that I am generally supportive of more homeless services in our neighborhood. I am also supportive of the conditional use process outlined by zoning that requires 51% of signatures. Without neighbors being on board, this one will not happen and it would not be successful. So I think that's very important, and you all being here and asking questions is what this neighborhood is all about. Thanks for letting me have the time to speak.
Hello. All right, before I get started, I want to say I am a deputy sheriff for the city of St. Louis. As a CIT officer, I work very closely with Peter and Paul. They're called 96-hour mental health pickups, so I'm very familiar. And I will say, I always brag about you guys. Your services are amazing and you are good. You guys truly are. And thinking about this, a lot of residents have reached out to me that being in a residential area with no screening and sex offenders, and with 3 blocks away a library and 5 blocks away a school, I, for one, cannot support it being in our neighborhood. I'm for the services and I will support you any way I can, trust me. I was Deputy of the Year in 2018 with mental health pickups. I understand it, I do. But I can't be far in a residential neighborhood for this location. So. My name is Tony Kirschner. I am running for Alderman for the current Ward 1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
First of all, I want to thank you you've done a great job emceeing. I know you were nervous at the beginning. You did great. I want to thank Peter and Paul for being here with us to answer questions. Thank you, Yusuf, as well for helping folks understand how the whole process works citywide. And I want to thank all of you for coming here. Just like Ivy said a minute ago, like rooms where we're full of people in the community looking at each other, hearing from each other is the most important thing we can do. No matter how we feel about this shelter, we need to have more community meetings in Carondelet. And I hope that we're doing that real soon. So I've talked to aldermen that have Peter and Paul facilities in their wards. Everyone attests to the stellar job that they do, and I want to help them, be successful. But ultimately, it's not up to me. It's not up to what I think about this project or any project. It's up to the folks who live in the immediate area, and everybody will and has to respect what you think. So that's really my perspective on it. But like Peter and Paul does an amazing job. Talk to people in the neighborhoods where they operate now. Talk to the officials in those areas, like they do a really good job. So that's all that I have to say. I'm happy to answer any questions folks have off-site after the meeting. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm Jimmy Lappe. I'm the alderman for the 11th Ward. I do the same thing. I always forget to say who I am. Pardon me.
You mentioned that there's a meeting next week as well.
Do we have the details for the meeting next week?
Back here, Monday night.
5:30.
Later, 5:30.
5:30 to 7:30.
Everybody hear that?
Because we knew this was not going to be enough to get all the questions in.
Thank you all.
Okay, I would really like to thank you guys for coming. I know it was short notice and you scheduled for us. I'm sorry, he wants to give a close.
I just want to repeat what just got said with the microphone. We will meet here again on Monday, this coming Monday from 5:30 to 7:30 because the library's open later. We understand that we have a stack of questions that we didn't get to tonight. We want to try to address those. So I also just wanted to, as Jimmy did, reiterate what Ivy said earlier. I think this is great. I think, whether you're supportive of us or not, whether you have fears and concerns about what we want to do in your neighborhood, or whether you're supportive and you want to work with us, I think this meeting just shows that you people care about your neighborhood, and I couldn't ask for anything more than that. So thank you.
Okay, so Julie's going to chase us out of here with a stick if we don't get out soon. So thank you, Yusuf, for